Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in any part of the world. Today we're going to be looking at unlawful or illegal interference and how it relates to us flying on the flight deck, and more particularly in the ICAO exam system, as to how we would respond to, for example, an angry passenger, a suspicious passenger, a passenger that is fighting. The critical thing to understand here is that on the flight deck we have a responsibility. Flight deck crew, first officer and captain, our primary responsibility is the safety of the flight, which includes our crew and passengers. The exam will specifically look at questions related to airport security. As pilots that are just coming into the profession, just starting your career, what type of questions would we want to ask in the exam? Excuse the ambulance in the background, here we go. What changes have you seen in airport security since 9/11? So today we're going to identify the type of changes that have been put in place since 9/11, since the aircraft flew into the World Trade Center, and we had that major problem. A lot of security problems have then been put in place since 9/11. A different question is, what measures has the aviation industry taken to increase the security of the flight deck and cabin? So we need to be careful here. The first question is about airport security. The second question is about security of the flight deck and cabin. What has changed? An easier question to answer is, what does ATC coordinate in the case of hijacking? What procedures would you adopt if you were informed by your company that there was a bomb threat or warning on your flight? Now listen to me again. Bomb threat, bomb threat. So there's different ways that we can talk about bombs. We talk about a bomb threat or a bomb warning. Basically, I have advice from the company that there is a potential threat or bomb or explosive on my aircraft. And then again, using photographs, as we'll show you at the end of the module, we'll show you a photograph. It might involve, for example, a canine or a sniffer dog. And then we will ask questions like, why do airports use sniffer dogs? The first thing that we need to understand as we move forward today is we need a definition of what is an unruly passenger. Basically, somebody who doesn't follow the rules. And the critical thing for us on the flight deck is that if the passenger's not following my cabin crew's instructions, they could possibly be interfering with the safety of my flight. How? They could be drunk. And if they're drunk, all right, maybe they're trying to open the exit door in flight. It happens. We've got video to support that today. They might not be following the instructions of the flight attendant. Like the flight attendant, I'm sure you've done it on flights, they were making the safety briefing and the flight attendant will say, please pay attention and turn off your cell phones. That's quite difficult for most of our passengers these days who are completely addicted to Instagram and WhatsApp. It's an addiction. And that addiction means that they're not following the instructions. Therefore, when I have an emergency, you did not pay attention, and I'm going to have a problem, as we're going to show you in the videos today. Also, specifically written under international law, you don't know this, but when you buy a ticket from Viva, LATAM, etc., on the booking is the small print. There's a little box that says, I agree to apply to stick to the terms and conditions. Have you ever read what the terms and conditions are? And it states specifically in there that it is an offense. It is illegal not to follow the instructions of the crew. So if the flight attendant says to you, please turn off your cell phone, and you do not, you're in breach. You are breaking international law. And that can have obviously an impact on the flight for other reasons. So we need to follow the instructions. The cabin crew are there primarily for your safety, and we need to respect that when they're giving a safety demonstration. I'm going to explain that as we get in today as well. Some of you might remember, if you've ever seen it, you know, the movie Fight Club, all right? And, you know, it's good to use a meme like this is, you know, not to fight on a plane, to bring it into reality, because we're getting passengers fighting on planes. We're going to look at that and what is our reaction. Now, the pandemic changed a lot of things in terms of international travel. First of all, we didn't have much travel. Now, as we're starting to travel, there are rules. Some of those rules include, for example, at the moment, that you still have to wear a face mask, a tapabocca, okay? Passengers might not want to do this. In fact, there's a lot of resistance, say, for example, in the United States, with people, you know, I'm not going to wear a tapabocca, I'm not going to get a vaccine because you're interfering with my rights. I'm not here to have a political discussion. The idea is to follow the rules. They're there for everybody's safety, not your own. Don't be selfish. The idea of a mask mandate is that if everybody wears it, it reduces the risk, not that it's an interference with your rights. I mean, if we could think about that for a second, did you resist, or did your parents resist when you had to have a polio vaccine, when you had to have all these vaccines to go to school? But now it's become a political cause in some countries. But it's also created a problem for us in airlines. If you look at the figures over here, and this was January 2021 to July 2021, look at the number of incidents that were occurring. And the problem is, it's my flight attendants that have to deal with this problem. It's also airport security. It makes a whole problem for everybody. What I'd like to do is give you an idea of exactly what I'm talking about. Take a look at this.
With the summer travel season about to kick off, the FAA says passenger behavior seems to have sunk to a new low this year. All-out fistfights spilling out of planes and into airports, with some passengers refusing to wear masks. Police called on board flights to remove passengers who refuse to follow the federal mask rule. In Denver, fellow passengers were forced to hold down a man who tried to open an emergency exit in flight. In Las Vegas, this man climbed out onto the wing of a plane. While across the country, political tensions were especially high in January.
You're a joke. Absolute joke.
Members of Congress and ordinary citizens harassed.
We the people, not you the elitists.
Now the FAA reports unruly passenger behavior has skyrocketed this year, from 150 cases in a typical year to 1,300 reported cases in just 4 months.
The physical and verbal abuse that flight attendants have been taking has been way off the charts of any kind of air rage incidents that we've been talking about over the past 20 years.
The most bad behavior complaints involve passengers refusing to wear masks, bringing their own alcohol on board, engaging in political intimidation, verbally or physically assaulting other passengers and crew members.
Flight attendants being physically assaulted, pushed, choked. We had a passenger urinate. We had a passenger spit into the mouth of a child on board. These are some of the things that we have been dealing with.
Now, the FAA is taking a zero-tolerance approach. Unruly passengers face potential criminal charges, fines of up to $35,000, and banned for life by the airlines. FAA Chief Steve Dixon, a former pilot and senior VP at Delta Airlines.
We've got to follow crew instructions on the aircraft, and it is not permissible, and we will not tolerate interfering with a flight crew in the performance of their safety duties, period.
The FAA, the TSA, and air marshals are going to be on guard and watching for more of this behavior throughout the summer as air travel is supposed to pick up dramatically. Air marshals, though, are often reluctant to get involved in a nonviolent situation out of concern that it may be a distraction from a real ongoing and potential terror threat. So very often, air marshals will sit and monitor the situation as other passengers get involved in de-escalating the situation. Guys, back to you.
All right, Tom, really unfortunate.
With the summer
one of the things we notice over there is, and we have to remember this, the primary responsibility of my cabin crew is the safety of the flight. Therefore, if you do not follow their instructions, I got a problem. Now, this is a video of what was happening before the pandemic. To give you an idea, yes, we had some incidents. What type of incidents?
Scare overnight. This time a passenger tried to open an emergency door during a Delta flight from Orlando to Boston. David Robichaux, our Boston station, WBZ, is at Logan Airport this morning.
Jeff, this is just the latest in a string of flights over the past few days disrupted by an unruly passenger. The Delta jet was midway in its 3-hour flight from Orlando to Boston last night when an unidentified passenger got up and tried to open an exit door.
Just tugged on it a little bit. You know what I mean? He didn't rip it wide open. He didn't do anything crazy like that. He just tugged on it.
An off-duty police officer stopped him, brought him to the back of the plane, and put him in a middle seat between 2 other passengers for the remainder of the flight. Witnesses say he was drunk. This comes on the heels of 3 similar incidents this week. Sunday, a Continental flight made an emergency landing in St. Louis after a man tried the same thing. A flight attendant and 2 passengers held the man down for 30 minutes until landing. Also Sunday, a Delta flight from Detroit to San Diego was diverted to Albuquerque when a note with the word bomb was found in a bathroom. The plane was searched, the passengers questioned.
So what you're hearing is that these events happen more or less on a daily basis. Before the pandemic, it was 6 to 10 times a day. After the pandemic, it's now 100 times a day. That's the increase. Crazy. Also, FAA is following what's basically happened around Europe, because Europe has had the same problems. And what we're seeing in Europe, for example, is that of all the incidents with passengers, 72% of all incidents involve physical aggression. That means they are attacking my cabin crew. And some of the audios you're going to hear today is the flight attendant's been hit by a passenger. Ask questions, give advice. Also, unruly passengers in Europe threaten the safety of 1,000 flights a year. This was before the pandemic. And 1 flight per month in Europe before the pandemic, an emergency landing due to unruly behavior. There are rules. We have manuals. ICAO regulates this under international law, as I've explained. The passengers have to follow the crew instructions. The crew are there for safety. Do not interfere with my crew when they're performing their safety duties. If it is part of their safety duty to give you a brief on what to do in emergency, you pay attention. That is the rule. Now, taking that to what they're actually doing in Europe, obviously we've got, if you do misbehave, and they've introduced very strict penalties. First of all, you're going to lose your vacation. Secondly, I'm going to send you up to 2 years in jail. Thirdly, I'm going to give you a £5,000 fine. That's 20 million de pesos currently in exchange right now. Sorry, 25 million de pesos multa. And if I have to divert, I'm going to give you a diversion multa of 400 million pesos. And you're going to be banned on my airline and other airlines for your life. So we're taking it seriously. In actual fact, they came up with a campaign. It's a bit humorous. They called it Flight Club instead of Fight Club. Let's take a look.
Seatbelt sign illuminates, fasten your seatbelt. Insert the metal clipping from one into the other. It's right, but forward.
that's the campaign, not on my flight. It's an awareness campaign that's been put on television in Europe. This was before the pandemic and is still rolling right now, to make passengers aware that if you misbehave, there are consequences, multas, jail, bans, etc. FAA soon followed and is now implementing more or less the same procedures. Now, as some of you know, we work with international airlines, more specifically here in Colombia, so we get the reports of incidents coming into us because we're involved in crew training. It was interesting to note that on a flight from Bogota to Miami 4 months ago, a passenger decided that he would go smoke in the bathroom. The cabin crew immediately went to the bathroom because the smoke detector went off, and told the passenger to return to his seat. No further action was taken at that time. Sadly, the passenger decided he would go smoke another cigarette. So at that time, the captain was alerted, and the captain then sent specific instructions to the cabin crew the police would now meet the plane on arrival in Miami. The passenger, who was traveling with his family and a young kid, all right, was arrested by the Miami-Dade authorities and went to jail and got a multa. We are taking it seriously, okay? Maybe you get a warning, but if you continue, this is what's going to happen.